Welcome back. Another episode of the Whole Nine Yards. Drew Pien here with Brandon Krikorian on a Friday night. Uh, Pat's game just happened last night. Just got some NBA news about Paul George. We'll start off with the Paul George extension. Brandon, I'll let you start on this one.
Yeah, so he got an extension. So he had a player option this year that it seemed like he probably would have opted in on it, but he got an extension. It was 4 years for 190 million, which brought his total to over 226 million if you count this year and then the 4 years that he just got. So he got a max extension. Some people may question that because of his season last season, but I think I don't really have a problem with it. I don't know what you think about it, but
I think if you're the Clippers, it was a move you had to do. It was either you sign Paul George or you blow it all entirely up and hope that you can recoup some of the picks that you gave away for Paul George and a lot of other players. I think this is a move you had to do. I did not think that blowing it up and potentially trying to trade PG and Kawhi would have been a smart move. So I really think you kind of had to make this contract sign, and now you're kind of just hoping that the Clippers play insanely well this year. It's really probably finals championship or bust. You probably are gonna have to win the championship or at least come really close to it for Kawhi to want to stay, at least in my mind. So yeah, this is a nice contract signing. Like, you got PG, which is definitely nice. But if Kawhi leaves in the offseason, then you're in a horrible spot because you're not really close to winning. You have Paul George on the back nine, and you have no picks. You have none of your own picks. You have no other team's picks. You don't have many young players that have potential. No Shea. Yeah. So, that's really that's my
well,
reaction to it.
I wouldn't say Kawhi's going to leave at the end of the year. I think you're right. Like, they definitely need to at least make it to the conference finals, but I'd be surprised if he left. I think the only way he'd leave is if they just had a ton of injuries or they got bounced in the first round. Like, it had to be something traumatic to where he just wouldn't want to come back. But he also has a player option, but if he plays out this next year, so he's not going to sign an extension like Paul George did, because if he plays out this year, then he'll get to 10 years in the league, which will get him early bird rights, which will mean that he can make more money, based off a team's cap. He can make more of the percentage of the cap that they have, he can make more of it if he gets to 10 years. So he's not going to sign an extension this year, and he'll most likely decline his player option next year. Even if he was staying with the Clippers, he'd decline it and then just sign a new contract with them, like a max contract. I don't know what the numbers would be, but it'd be a max contract for him. So I don't really see him leaving. Again, only if they just have a terrible year. Maybe he gets injured. I don't know. If he gets injured, maybe he'd stay. I don't know. But if stuff just doesn't work out in their favor.
That's possible. It did happen last year. They were probably the heavy favorites, at least in a lot of expert analysts' opinions. I think it's possible that they get bounced in the second round. I'm not going to predict it. I still think this team is very talented, and Kawhi and Paul George ideally are two of the top 10 best players in the league. I don't know that Paul George is that anymore. I don't think he is. Probably not. He's probably top 20.
Yeah, top 20.
But Kawhi is probably top 4.
Yeah, I'd have
even argue higher.
I'd have him
honestly.
at 3 or 4.
Yeah, wait. So, well, I won't get into it, but yeah, the extension I think is worth it. You kind of have to. You're in that position. I just don't think you have no future other than these two players. You're in it for now. You want to win now, so I'm fine with the extension. We're going to move into the NFL now. We're going to start off with the quick reaction to the Thursday night game. The Patriots ended up getting defeated by the Rams 24-3. And really, it was a horrible showing by the Patriots offense. The Rams defense showcased why it might be the NFL's best right now. The secondary is really, really good. Aaron Donald, obviously, probably the best defensive player in the league for the past few years at this point. He had 2 sacks last night. And the Patriots offensive line has been one of the bright spots so far, and a year where there's not many bright spots to be had for the Patriots. And Aaron Donald made the Pats offensive line look horrible. I want to say it was Jermaine Illuminor. He was horrible. Uh, we had there were we've got all pros in the offensive line that did not look all pro at all. And yeah, I think the main thing to look at though, and I'll keep it quick here, is Cam Newton. Absolutely horrible. I want to say it was the I think it was before the half. We were at like the 42-yard line or something, and we actually handed it off because Cam Newton can't throw a Hail Mary, so we handed it off to James White instead. And I mean, that just shows how, how much of a shell of himself he really is. He can't throw 50 yards down the field anymore. His short accuracy is abysmal. You saw that in the interception. Just he can't throw short. It's horrible. I mean, comparing even Brady last year to Newton right now, short term or short passes is just, it's night and day. Newton can throw medium to long, like 20 yards downfield. He can, but he also is incredibly slow and takes his time in the pocket for sure. So the offensive line has to do their best job to protect him. Overall, in my opinion, he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. And maybe this is just what he's been for ever since week 3 against the Seahawks, basically, or week 2. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I think you can ride out with Cam Newton, but once you lose one more game, I would say go with Stidham for the rest of the year. See what he has to show for the last couple games or whatever it ends up being. I don't think anyone thinks he's like the guy for the future, but I'd like to see what you have at least. If he plays horrible in the last 2 games, I'd have no problem with cutting him in the offseason and just seeing what you can get in the draft. But yeah, I also don't want Newton back for next year. Ideally, if it was to be a veteran, it would be somebody other than Newton. But yeah, we'll get more into that later, probably in the offseason, stuff like that. So we'll get into our NFL playoff bracket predictions here. We're just going to go seed by seed here. We're going to give our official, if you want to call it, predictions. We'll see how many we get right. Brandon, I'll let you start off with the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, so I think we're both going to have the same pick here, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs. They've been the best team in the NFL the entire year. We both agreed on that. We both think
Is it even close? Like, I don't even know if there's like room for debate on it at this point. I don't know. Like I know the Chiefs haven't looked that great recently, but I feel like you can almost tell they're just sleepwalking through these games and winning still. I just don't. I don't know if you think there's even a team that's even close to beating. Like,
Well, I would say the only team would possibly be the Saints, just because their defense is so good. Now they haven't had Breeze the last couple games, so I don't know what they'd look like when he comes back. I wouldn't assume it's that different, but I'd say like if there's one team that could possibly beat them, I'd probably say the Saints. I couldn't really think of another team that could beat them.
yeah, I mean the Saints, sure. I mean I think there's teams that could beat them on any given Sunday. Like it's the NFL, but
I mean, what if like
yeah,
in a dire situation, like what's if you had to pick one team, I'd say the
yeah,
Saints.
I would probably pick the Saints too. But I don't know. Yeah, I definitely don't see any teams in the AFC beating them in the playoffs. That's for sure. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I'd have Chiefs number 1. That obviously means the Steelers will have to lose another game in the regular season, and the Chiefs probably won't lose another game in the regular season, or they can't really, because the Steelers, as of right now, do have the tiebreaker because the Chiefs' loss was in conference and the Steelers' loss was out of conference. So the Steelers do, as of right now, have the number 1 seed. But yeah, we both agreed Chiefs number 1. Number 2, right now, I have the Steelers. It does not necessarily mean I think the Steelers are the second best team in this conference. It just comes down to the Steelers have an 11-1 record right now. And the second best, or after that, it is the Bills at 9-3. I guess the Browns are technically 9-3 in their division as well. But yeah, I have the Steelers as the 2 seed. I don't see them collapsing enough to the point where they're able to fall beneath that.
Yeah, I have the same pick. I don't think they're the second best team in the AFC, but just based on their record and where they are, I would say they most likely finish up as the 2nd seed. It'd be surprising if they fell to like the 3rd seed. I mean, maybe Buffalo could catch them. I think the division is probably theirs. They'd really have to collapse for the Browns to catch them. Then that last game of the season they play each other. That'd be a huge game, but I don't think it'll come down to that. So unless the Bills like win out, I don't really. And then even still, the Steelers would have to lose at least 2 games. So I would say Steelers get second seed, and it'd be more of like, will they even see Kansas City in the championship game? Do you think?
I mean, I would say it's more likely the Chiefs don't see the Steelers than they do.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, I think even though they'd be lined up to see each other in the conference championship, I really don't even see the Steelers getting there.
I would say it's more likely any other team does than the Steelers. Now, if I had to pick one team, I probably still don't go with the Steelers, but I would say if somebody did pick the Steelers, I wouldn't think that's egregious. I mean, clearly not at the 2 seed, but yeah. I mean, I think it's just the lack of the running game, and I just don't think this team's as good as its record has been. I mean, I think the Washington game kind of showed that, and next week the Steelers do go to Buffalo to play the Bills. We will see how that game plays out, and if the Bills do win that game, I think then maybe this 2 versus 3 seed does become a slightly more interesting. But even then, uh, even if the Bills do win that game, I still think I would have the Steelers here at the number 2 seed. I'll let you give your 3 seed prediction here.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the Bills. I've been really high on the Bills this year, and they have that game this week against the Steelers, which again that could go either way. Even again, if I agree with you, if they win, I still see the Steelers being the 2 seed. I don't really see the Bills being able to get to that 2 seed, even with the win over the Steelers. But they have 2 more in division game against the Patriots and the Dolphins, and obviously we just talked about the Patriots; they got blown out, but that's still a tough game in New England. And then they play the Dolphins last game of the season, and they go to Denver next week. So none of those are easy games, despite what the records may say. But I still see them being the 3 seed, and I really like him in the playoffs. I guess we're not going to get into that, but when it comes to playoffs, they're definitely one of my favorite teams to possibly come out of the AFC. Obviously the Chiefs, but if it wasn't the Chiefs, I'd probably pick the Bills.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I'm in agreement here. I have the Bills at the 3 seed. I think it comes down to, I mean, they're a game ahead of the Titans, and looking at the schedules, I don't see the Titans catching up. The Bills do have a tough schedule, but I ultimately, we'll get into this later, but I do think the Bills will win against the Steelers. I think the Bills will go to Denver and win that game. I think the Bills will probably beat New England. And if the last game of the season matters, I do think the Bills will beat the Dolphins as well. So
Do you
I
think they
think the
win out?
Bills, I think there's a solid chance they win out. Yeah.
That I wouldn't be surprised if they won out, but I don't know if I could see them winning
Even
out.
if they don't win out, the Titans aren't winning out either.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
I
yeah.
yeah, I have the Steelers here, or sorry, the Bills here at the 3 seed. It would have to be the Titans to catch up to them, because the Browns, if the Browns win the division, they'd be the 2, or presumably they'd be the 2. So yeah, I would have the Bills here at 3. I'll go to the 4 seed. I have the Titans. I've had the Titans ever since, I guess, technically the beginning of the year. Um, I'm not necessarily high on them. I like them slightly more than the Colts. Even though I'm not a big Tannehill guy, I do trust Tannehill more than I trust Rivers. The Colts definitely have a better defense for sure. I still think the Titans' offense is much better. I mean, Derrick Henry makes that offense just unstoppable at times in the run game, especially when we get later into the year. Like we said before, January football, I mean, it's a completely different game, especially if the Titans have to go to Buffalo and it's snowing. I mean, the Titans have a much better running game than the Bills do.
Yeah, so for my number 4 seed, I have the Colts. You've been on the Titans basically the whole year. I've been on the Colts for that division. So I think the Colts can win it. And when we were looking at their schedules a couple of weeks ago, you were arguing that the Colts schedule was harder. But now when you look at it after the games that have been played, this week they're playing the Raiders. A couple weeks ago that looked like a hard matchup. Not saying it's not hard, but it's definitely easier than it looked before. Then they host the Texans. I mean, Texans are not that good. It really would just come down to if Watson could carry them in that game. And they're at the Steelers. Again, that's a game that seemed kind of hard and maybe not so anymore when it comes to that second to last week. And then they play the
You're
Jaguars.
that low on the Steelers? Wow. So
I'm
would you
not.
pick the Colts in that game?
I'd have to see how these next 2 weeks go, but
Well,
I
right now,
probably
if this
would.
was then, so okay. So if this was the next week's matchup instead of Colts Raiders in Pittsburgh, you would pick the Colts.
I probably would. Yeah, I think their defense. They
Uh,
both have really good defenses, but the Steelers cannot run the ball.
no, I agree with that for sure. They don't even try a lot of the time. They didn't
Yeah,
last week at
they don't
least.
try, and then when they do try, they can't even do it. So, it wouldn't be like I wouldn't be super confident in picking the Colts, but I think it would be a tough game and a low scoring game, and I think the Colts would come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think I'd pick the Steelers, but yeah, I mean, I definitely respect that pick because it's a tough one to
And
make.
but even if they lost that game, I mean, if they were to win this week, I could see them being the Texans and the Jaguars. So if they finish 3-1, then they go 11-5.
I mean,
Then
you'd force the Titans to basically have to win out to actually. Well, the Titans
they
have.
have the same record. They're both 8-4.
So
So
who has the tiebreaker right now though? I want to say the Titan.
well,
I'm pretty sure the
they
Titans
played each
do.
other twice, and they're 1-1 against each other. I'd have to look at to see
I'm
like the next tiebreaker.
I'm
But
pretty sure the Titans have the
the
tiebreaker. It
Titan, yeah,
goes to divisional record.
the Titans have it because right now they are first in the division, so they do have it. But again, I mean, the Titans they play the Jaguars, then they play the Lions, then they play the Packers in Green Bay, and then they play the Texans. So it's kind of a similar schedule, in that both of those Week 16 games are against tougher opponents. So I just want to see over these next 2 weeks to see if the Titans get upset by the Jaguars or the Lions, or if the Colts get upset by the Texans. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I think it could honestly go either way. I wouldn't be surprised to see either team win it. I will say I think the Packers are better than the Steelers right now. I think you would probably agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But that doesn't mean the Titans can't go to Green Bay and win that game. Right now, I'm going to stick with the Titans, but yeah, I mean it's very close. It's very close. Moving to the number 5 seed, I do have the Colts at the 5 seed here, even though I kind of just talk bad about them. I still think they're a solid team. They could easily win the division. I don't have them as the division winner, but they could easily win it. Their defense is amazing. It's definitely better than the Browns defense. I would say you could technically call this like an upset pick or whatever you want to say because the Colts are 8-4 and the Browns are 9-3. I think the Colts are a better team. I think the Browns might have a slight advantage at quarterback just because I'm so not high on Phillip Rivers. But even then, they might. I don't even know that they do, though. The Colts have a better defense. And I think that's kind of where it comes down to. The Browns have a better running game for sure. Their running game is very nice, but organizationally, I trust the Colts much more than I trust the Browns. It would not surprise me that the Browns lose to the Ravens, then lose at the Giants. They're going to beat the Jets, and then it wouldn't surprise me if they lost to the Steelers. They could go 1-3 in their last 4 games, and just like that, they're 10-6, and they're looking not great for the playoffs.
Well, yeah, that's why I think my pick is probably a surprising pick, at least for this spot, the fifth seed in the
Is
AFC.
it Ravens?
I'm gonna go with the Ravens. Yeah,
Wow.
I looking at the Ravens and their schedule now. Look, they're 7-5. The Browns are 9-3, so they're 2 wins behind them. But they play this week. It's going to come down to this week to see if this will actually come true. Because if the Ravens can win, then they'll be 2-0 against the Browns. So if it ever had to come to a tiebreaker, they'd always have it because they'd be 2-0 against them. But if they beat the Browns, then they play the Jaguars. That's most likely a win. Then they host the Giants, and for how good the Giants have been playing in their defense, that's a tough game to go. I know they went to Seattle and beat them, but going to Baltimore and they would have been on, if they do win these next 2 games, they would have won 3 straight at home. They would have been fully healthy. I wouldn't assume anyone would be on the COVID list at that point. I'd go Ravens that game, and then they played the Bengals last week. So I could easily see them going 4-0. Now, it starts with this week if they could win against the Browns, but I would not be surprised if they finish 11-5 and they get that 5th seed.
Yeah, no, I think that's a solid argument. I think the Ravens do win this week at at Cleveland. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but yeah, I mean, I could see the Ravens easily winning out. I still do have the Colts at the 4 seed, partly because they do have the record advantage right now. I think you can make the argument the Ravens are the better team. They definitely have the higher ceiling. I would say they probably have on paper the better roster. Even though I'm not a Lamar Jackson guy, I do think Lamar at his ceiling is much better than Phillip Rivers. I'll go with the Colts though with the 5 seed. I at the 6 seed, I will have the Ravens. I just think it comes down to the Ravens are more trustworthy than the Browns, and they do play this week. I would take the Ravens over the Browns this week for sure. Now, even if the Ravens win that game, they're still going to be back half a game. So the Browns will need to lose another game, but I mean, I think that's going to happen. I wouldn't even be, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns went 1-3 and end up 10-6. I would not be surprised at all to see that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised about that either. That's why that factored into my decision to pick the Ravens with that 5th spot. And I'll get into the Browns after this pick because for my 6th seed, I'm actually going with the Titans. So I think the Titans right now they're 8-4. Even though I think the Colts will win the division, I still see the Titans getting that 6th spot. I don't think they drop down to 7. And that's mostly due to the Browns not being able to finish strong at the end of the season, not so much the Titans being able to go 3-1 or 4-0 to end the season. So I'm gonna go Titans with the 6th seed, and then kind of like I was saying for my 7th seed, moving on to the 7th seed, I'm going with the Browns. They play a very hard schedule. We've kind of gone over it, but they host the Ravens, which again I think the Ravens are going to win that game. Then they're at the Giants, which that's definitely going to be a hard game. It's 2 teams that are going to run the ball most likely. I mean, Jones is going to be back for that game, but the Browns are definitely a running team. And with the way that the Giants have been playing these last couple of weeks, they're definitely more of a running team than a passing team. So that would be definitely a tough game, but I could definitely see them losing that game. Then they play the Jets. I mean, you'd assume the Browns would win that game. And then they play the Steelers, which I think the Steelers can easily win that game. It could go either way, but I would probably pick the Steelers. So I could see the Browns going 1-3, which would put them at 10-6, which I would think would put them at the 7th seed. At least for me,
Yeah.
it put them at the 7th seed.
No, I agree. 10-6 probably is the 7th seed. I would say it's most likely they probably go 2-2, but yeah, if they get lucky, they probably go 3-1. If they get unlucky, they probably go 1-3. I think that they get the 7th seed though. I do think the Ravens win and they'll probably end up catching up. I think the Ravens are overall the better team as well. And I hate to be so negative and down on the Browns because all they've done so far this year is prove me wrong. I really didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. I didn't think they were going to be 9-3, 12 games into the year. So they've proven me wrong all this year. Technically, that Titans game, they definitely proved me wrong. So I'm still going to doubt on them. Eventually, maybe I'll be right unless they win the Super Bowl. So, yeah. We'll get into the NFC.
Well, just one thing. So we both have the Dolphins missing the playoffs, and right now they are in the playoffs.
Yeah. I think it just comes down to I think they're gonna lose to the Chiefs this week.
Yeah, me too.
I think they're probably gonna lose to the Bills in the last game of the year, depending on how things shake out. I honestly think they might lose to the Patriots as well.
I mean, that's
I think they have a tough schedule. Chiefs, Patriots, Raiders, schedule. Bills. I mean, they could. I don't think they go 0-4, but I feel like they could. I don't know. I think they could go 1-3. They could go 2-2. I don't see them going 3-1.
Yeah, I would say at best they go 2-2, which would be wins over the Patriots and the Raiders. I would say. But that Raiders game is tough. It's going to be in Las Vegas.
It's going to be in Las Vegas, and that's probably going to be a game where like the Raiders have to win to cling on to the playoff hopes at that point.
Yeah. So that's not going to be an easy game at all.
Yeah.
And having the Chiefs in this first game and the Bills in that last game, and that Bills game could be important for the Bills because, I mean, maybe they can get that 2 seed. So
yeah, I mean, if they do beat the Steelers, then it most likely will be a very important game for them.
Yeah.
or at least they'll have to win that to have a chance at getting the 2 seed in case the Steelers lose or something like that. I mean, I think so. For me, the reason I don't really have the Dolphins in the playoffs is I still think Tua isn't the best quarterback in the world, and I don't, I'm a pretty big Tua guy, I guess, or at least I was coming out of college. Uh, but he's not a Justin Herbert right now. He's not like a top 10 guy. He's pretty conservative. He doesn't make a lot of plays right now, at least in my opinion. And I don't think this Dolphins team is very talented. I think Brian Flores has done a great job. He's done a great job defensively. And I mean, that means something. But I still think that I still would say the Browns, Ravens, and Colts make it in as wild card teams over the Dolphins right now.
Yeah, the Dolphins, it's really their defense that wins games. Like, Tua is not really doing much offensively, and that's really not why they're winning games. But like their last 4 games have been against the Bengals, Jets, Broncos, and Chargers, and they went 3-1. I mean, those are some of the worst teams in the NFL. So I think them being 8-4 right now is not like a mistake or on accident, but I think they kind of overperformed a little bit, and these last 4 games will kind of bring them down. I think like they'll probably finish 9-7, possibly 10-6, but I'd say 9-7, which I mean that's a pretty good year in your second year when most people thought you'd probably be like 5-11, 6-10. So it's
Well,
definitely a
here's
good
the
year.
thing, though. Here's the thing. If they go 2-2, that means they're 10-6, which I mean ties them with what we potentially think the Browns would be. That would make it very interesting because I don't know who would have the tiebreaker. It would go to division record, right? I want to say.
Yeah, and I mean if we think that they'd both be 10-6, that means I mean yes, technically that means the Browns would probably have a worse division record. I guess we have to look and
I'm pretty
see.
sure because I think the Browns all 3 of their losses. So they lost to the Ravens, they lost to the Steelers, and they lost to okay. They lost. So they have 2 division losses right
But then
now,
we're
and they have two
predicting them to
division games
lose,
left.
and we're predicting them to lose those last 2 division games.
Yeah,
So
so they'd be what is that? 2-4 in the division,
but
right?
even still, yeah. But even still, I think the Dolphins. I don't see them getting to 10-6.
I think it's possible. I mean, the more I
It's
think about it, the
possible,
more
but
I, I,
I don't know.
I'm not predicting it, but yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think the Dolphins have a solid chance at least. Before I move to the NFC, actually, one thing. I just want to. The Patriots technically still have a path into the playoffs. If the teams, okay, so if the Dolphins lose this week, the Raiders lose this week, and the Ravens lose this week, that actually means that the Patriots have a real chance to make the playoffs. If and that's assuming they win out. And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't even think it's. I don't no way they're running out because they're garbage. But I just thought I would. I thought I would put that out there, just as a fun type of thing. Like, because I mean, if the Ravens lose, that means they're 7-6. If the Raiders lose, they're also 7-6. And if the Dolphins lose, they're 8-5. So that only puts them 1 game behind the Ravens and 1 behind the Raiders. And they have the tiebreaker over both of them.
Yeah, there's no chance to make the playoffs.
I mean, there is not, but I'm just saying, if things go the Patriots' way and for some reason they're able to win out, there's a chance they could make it at 9-7. I don't see it, but I'm just there's still a chance. If the Patriots were to make the playoffs, that I mean, obviously I'm a Patriots fan, so like I'd love that, but I mean that would just be so interesting. And if the Chiefs were the 2 seed and the Patriots were the 7 seed, that would be I mean that would be fun for me. I just think that would be such a good spot for the Patriots. And they're garbage. They're garbage. I wish they had a better quarterback. But that's just like the classic Bill Belichick spot to be in, where it's like like everyone's counted you out, and you're about to play the best team in the league. That'd be great. But anyways, we'll move on to the NFC. I'll let you start off with your number 1 seed.
Yeah, I have the Saints as the 1 seed. Right now they are the number 1 seed, and it's definitely not. It's not like definitive that they'll be the number 1 seed. The Packers are 9-3. The Saints are only 10-2, but I think they're just the best team in the NFC. I'm high on the Packers, but they're still inconsistent in their defense. Their defense can be really shaky at times. So And the Saints, it's a complete opposite. They have one of the best defenses in the league. And with the players that they have on offense, with Kamara, Thomas, Sanders, Cook, and then Breeze, Taysom Hill, whatever you want to say, I think they're just far and away the better team. So, and they do have, a pretty tough schedule. I mean, they play the Eagles this week. It's probably a win. Then they play the Chiefs and the Vikings, which could be a tough game, depending on what Viking team you get. And then they play the Panthers at the end of the season. So it's not like an easy schedule. It's not a super hard schedule, but I still see them getting the 1 seed, with them already being 10-2.
I've got the Packers as my number 1 seed, and that's definitely like a surprising pick.
Just a little bit.
I would say I'm not as big on the Saints as other people, I guess. I mean, their defense has played outstanding. Again, arguably the league's best defense right now. But I'm not a Drew Brees is going to be back for the playoffs. I'm not a Drew Brees guy. I'm also not a Taysom Hill guy. Not that it matters, but I think the Saints lose to the Chiefs. I think they lose to the Vikings as well. I think they go 2-2. I think the Packers, I'll go to them real quickly and look at their schedule. I think the Packers probably went out. I think the Packers went out. I think they beat the Lions. I think they beat the Panthers. I think they probably beat the Titans, and I think they beat the Bears. And that would give the Packers the 1 seed.
I mean, I could definitely see that happening, but I just think their defense is just not consistent enough. And I think in one of those games, they're going to give up, 25, 30 points. And not saying the offense can't score that, but sometimes, you go down early in the game or the defense just can't get a stop when you need it to, and it doesn't matter what you're doing offensively, you just can't be able to tie it or take the lead. So I'd say at least one of those games they lose, which would mean, what I think is going to happen, then the Saints would still get the 1 seed if the Packers were to go 3-1.
Yeah, if you have the Saints going undefeated or going 3-1 technically.
Yeah, I mean they just have to go 3-1. So.
Yeah, I think the Packers ultimately grab this 1 seed, though. Again, I'm just not as high in the Saints. And I think the Saints need the bye. I don't want to have Breeze have to win more games than he really has to at this age, which sounds kind of dumb, but it's really not, because I just am not high on Drew Brees. And I feel like any given playoff game, he can just decide to, for some reason, only be able to throw the ball 30 yards downfield, and he just throws ducks, and they end up losing essentially because of Breeze. And in the past years, their team in general has been like disappointing, like last year against the Vikings. I mean, that was just overall just a super disappointing loss. But yeah, I mean, I've got the Packers as the 1 seed. 2 seed, though, I have the Saints. It just comes down to their record is better than everybody else's in the league right now. They could probably go 2-2 and they're still probably going to be the number 2 seed if they do go 2-2. There's not, for it to even be for it to even be close, the Rams or the Seahawks would have to win out. I don't really see that happening, or at least it's not very likely. So I would say, and the Saints, who knows? The Saints could go 3-1, or they could win out. I don't know. But yeah, I would be very surprised if the Saints fell below the number 2 seed, and I have them at 2 here. So.
Yeah, so for my 2 seed, I have the Packers. Just to go back to what you were saying, though, if the Packers were to go 3-1 and the Saints were to go 2-2, they'd both be 12-4. And right now, the Saints are 5-0 in the division, and the Packers are 3-1. The Packers have 2 division games left, and then the Saints have 1 left. So really, the only way that they could win in a tiebreaker would be, no, the Packers already beat the Saints, so actually they would get that tiebreaker no matter what. So I guess technically if they were to tie, then the Packers would get the 1 seed. I still don't see the Saints going 2-2 though, which means that I have them at least going 13-3. And assuming I'm right on that, then the Saints would be 1 and the Packers would be 2. So I'm kind of banking on the Saints going 3-1 and the Packers not going 4-0 to get my 1 and 2 seed predictions correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing to bank on. I think the Packers probably win out. If not, they don't go anything less than 3-1. maybe the Saints went out. Maybe they don't. I think they lose to the Chiefs though for sure, and I think there's a legitimate shot that they lose to the Vikings
Well,
as well.
they rather lose to the Chiefs or they lose to the Vikings. Like they're so up for the Chiefs game that they either lose it and then they beat the Vikings and beat the Panthers, or they lose that Chiefs game and then they win the Vikings game. I don't really see them losing both games.
I think there's a chance they lose both.
I'd be surprised if they lost both.
I wouldn't. I would not, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, I'll move. I'll get into my 3 seed here. My 3 seed is the Rams. I think the Rams are probably a top 3 team in this conference. Their defense is great. Their offense is still very good. They don't have any elite wide receiving talent, but Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are 2 very solid receivers. I would say they're both capable of being number 1 receivers on a team. I don't know that they're like the greatest number 1s ever, but they're both plenty capable of being number 1s. Uh, Jared Goff, while many might not like him, I would say he's probably still an above average quarterback in this league. And McVay is, in my opinion, a top 5 coach in this league. I don't know where exactly I'd have him in that top 5, but I'd almost certainly have him in the top 5, just thinking of it off the top of my head. And looking at the defense, again, like I said, they've been playing outstanding. Jalen Ramsey might be the best cornerback in the league right now. Aaron Donald's probably, and I don't even know if there's necessarily a debate, he's probably just the best defensive player in the league right now, and I don't even know that it's close. Yeah, I mean, the Rams defense has been unreal. I see them definitely winning this division over the Seahawks. The Seahawks have not been too impressive as of recently, especially after that Giant game. The Rams have 3 games left. They're going to play the Jets on Sunday. Well, sorry, next Sunday, because they just play the Patriots. They're going to win that game. Then they play the Seahawks. That's really the game that's going to decide this division, most likely, is going to be who wins that game. The Rams do travel to Seattle to play it. I'm going to pick the Rams most likely in that game. Who knows? Maybe that game doesn't decide who wins the division. There's a chance it doesn't, even though their records are tied. The Seahawks still play 4 more games, and the Rams still play 3 more. And then after that, the Rams host the Cardinals, and I ultimately think they will win that one too. So I do think the Rams will win out. That puts them at 12-4, and I think that ultimately gets them the 3 seed.
Yeah, I have the Rams at 3-2. I'm not too confident in it because I'm not really big on the Rams. I'm not a big golf guy. I really haven't been. It's more just like McVay and the offense that kind of elevated him in like 2017, 2018. And you can see these last 2 years when people started picking up on their offense and golf, he just got worse and worse. And he's still good, but he's not one of the top quarterbacks in the league. It's really their defense that carries them, which is, I think most people would be surprised if you said in 2018 that in 2 years their defense would be carrying them to wins and their offense would be like so-so. I just don't – the reason I wouldn't pick the Seahawks would be because I don't trust the Seahawks enough because of their defense. It's kind of the opposite of the Rams where their offense is good enough to win games, but they can't just keep putting up 30-plus every game and hoping to win. Now, the Seahawks defense has been a little bit better recently, but I still don't trust it enough to hold opponents to like under 20, 24 points. And the Rams defense, I do trust them to do that, which is all they need to do is win. As long as they get more than 20 to 24 points, then the Rams will win games. So that's why I'm picking them to win the division.
I mean, just thinking about the Seahawks right now, like, can I say the Seahawks team is basically just Russell Wilson, Lockett, Metcalf, and Adams, and just leave it at that? Or I guess, and Wagner maybe. But
even Wagner is not.
Yeah, even Wagner. Yeah, I would say it's really just 4 people on that team, and after that, it's kind of just a bunch of filler.
It's basically like keep it between 7 to 10 points in like the end of the third quarter and hope that Wilson can get like 2 touchdowns and you could somehow get a turnover or a stop. Like that's basically all their games.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to come down to how far Wilson can carry them, at least in my mind. I've been a big Seahawks guy ever since, I mean, I guess 2013, I guess you could say. I don't know. I mean, I've always liked Russell Wilson. I've always liked Pete Carroll as well. I mean, Pete Carroll is probably a top 5 coach still. which I mean means a good amount because there's not many coaches that can be a top 5 coach for so long. I still think though the Rams have a much better roster, except for the quarterback position, basically. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Rams there. I'll let you start with the 4 seed.
Yeah, so the 4 seed, I'm going with the Giants. They are gonna win the NFC East right now. They're tied with Washington at 5-7, but I think I think that they'll be able to come out of this division. I see them. So their schedule goes Cardinals, Browns, Ravens, Giants. Cowboys. I see them beating the Cardinals this week, and we'll get into that game in a little bit. But I do see them winning this game. That Browns game, it's going to be a tough game, but I think that they can win that game. I see them losing the Ravens game, and I see them most likely beating the Cowboys. It's the last week of the season. I doubt the Cowboys will even try to even compete in that game just because of the season that they've had. So I would say the Giants win that game, and then they would finish 8-8, and I think that would get you into the 4 seed with them already having 2 wins over Washington. So even if Washington were to tie, they'd still get the 4 seed. So the only way is if Washington were to win out, and I don't really see that happening. So I'm gonna go with Giants.
I'm in agreement here. I do have the Giants as the 4 seed. I will say I'm not as confident in it as you are, and I think there are a lot of people that are confident in the Giants winning this division, and I will say that I think it is much closer than people think. If you just want to compare the schedules, I think the Giants, you could argue, have a tougher schedule. Washington plays the 49ers and the Seahawks and the Panthers and the Eagles. I mean, really, who knows? The Giants do have the tiebreaker, which I mean is huge. It's definitely huge for them. But I could easily see the Giants. I mean, I could see the Giants losing to the Cardinals. I will get into that game later. But all I will say right now is I would not be shocked if the Cardinals won that game. I would not be shocked if the Browns beat the Giants as well. I would not be shocked at all if the Giants lost to the Ravens. And the Giants probably win that Cowboys game. But I wouldn't be shocked to see the Giants go 1-3. And I wouldn't be shocked to see the Washington football team go 2-2. And that would give Washington the division crown. Am I going to pick it? No, I'm not going to pick it because I ultimately do think the Giants will beat the Cardinals. I think the Giants have a decent shot to beat the Browns. I think worst case, the Giants go 2-2. And I think honestly, best case that the Washington goes 3-1, and that's best case. So I'm definitely not going to pick the Washington to win this division, but I mean, I think it's closer than people think is all I'm trying to say. I'll get into the 5th seed here. I have the Seahawks. They have the best record out of any of the wild card teams right now. I think they're gonna stick with that, and they're gonna get the 5 seed. We've talked about them already. It's Wilson, it's Metcalf, it's Lockett. I'm not a big Metcalf guy, but Metcalf is still a great receiver. It's Adams, and that's basically it. I'll let you go with the number 5 seed.
I'm gonna go with the Bucks. I think they're gonna be the 5 seed over the Seahawks or any other team, but it's basically just between the Seahawks and the Bucks for that 5th seed. And I said it before; these last couple weeks, I've been saying it that they needed this bye week that they're coming off of to get the offense back on track and get all the playmakers going, like Evans, Godwin, somewhat Brown, somewhat Gronk, and just honestly just get Brady going. So I think that these next 4 games, they go Vikings, Falcons, Lions, and then Falcons again. I mean, it's a pretty easy schedule when you're looking at it. 2 at home, 2 on the road. The road games are Lions and Falcons, so it's not like the hardest road games. So I would probably say they could beat, I would say at worst they're 3-1. And I wouldn't be surprised if they finish the season undefeated. And then that put them at 11-5. But even at 10-6, I could see them getting that 5th seed over Seattle. So I'm gonna go Bucks at my 5th seed.
I've got Bucks at the 6th seed. I don't see them getting the 5th seed at 10-6. I would be very surprised. I'm not very surprised, but I'd be pretty surprised if that were to happen. The Seahawks are 8-4 right now. They'd have to go 2-2, and I don't know if the Bucks would have the tiebreaker or not, but yeah, I don't see the Seahawks going 10-6 in all likelihood. I'm not super confident in the Buccaneers winning out or anything. I think they need to win this Vikings game, and if they don't, then I'm ready to just say that the Bucks are done. So I do think the Bucks will win that game. Uh, but honestly, I mean, nothing's guaranteed for this Bucks team, at least from what I've seen so far this year. So I do have the Bucks at the 6th seed right now. I don't know who they lose to. They don't even necessarily have to lose to anybody, but I think they probably lose one of these games left, and they probably end up going 10-6 and grab that 6th seed.
Well, even if Seattle goes 2-2 and the Bucks go 3-1, they'd both be 10-6. And at least from what we're thinking, right now they're both 2-2 in the division. They both have 2 games left. Seattle plays the Rams and the Niners the last 2 weeks, and the Bucks play the Falcons twice. So if we're looking at just their division games, and if they would end up with the same record, I mean, I feel more confident in the Bucks beating the Falcons twice than Seattle beating LA and San Francisco. So
I would
it's
agree with
definitely
that.
it's not out of the question that I mean, again, for me, I have them as the 5th seed, so I think they will be able, whether it's a tie and then a tiebreaker, which should be in division games, or they just go 4-0 and the Seahawks go 2-2. So I think that there is a case that they can easily tie for record, and the Bucks would get the tiebreaker, so they would be the 5th seed.
I think the Seahawks most likely go 3-1. I think they probably lose that Rams game, but I think they probably win that Niners game. Just because the Niners probably won't be playing for anything in the last game of the year, and the Seahawks probably will be. Okay, my pencil just fell out of my hand. I'm going to restart that. What was I saying?
We're talking about like you can see them losing the Rams game, but beating the Niners.
Okay. I think the Seahawks probably lose that Rams game, but they probably go 3-1. They're going to beat the Jets. They're probably going to beat Washington, and they'll probably beat the Niners, especially because it's the last game of the year. Niners aren't playing for anything. But yeah, I mean, I've got the Seahawks at 5, Bucks at 6. If it was Bucks 5, Seahawks 6, I mean, yeah, it's possible. I'm not going to predict it though. We're at 7 seed now, right?
Yeah, and if I didn't make it clear, Seahawks are my 6th seed.
Yeah.
I don't know if I said
Okay.
it before, but they're my 6th seed.
Yeah, I'll let you start off with the 7 seed.
So for the 7th seed, I'm kind of conflicted. So right now it's the Vikings who are the 7th seed. And I think most people would pick the Vikings or the Cardinals to get into that 7th seed. But I'm going to go with Washington to get that 7th seed. I think that they can finish.
Wow. I mean, that's a
It's
pretty
a bold
pick.
But this is why. Because right now they're 5-7. I think they can end the year 7-9. And I would not be surprised if the Vikings finish 7-9 also. I mean, they play the Bucks, which I think the Bucks will win. Then they play the Bears, the Saints, and the Lions. And I think they lose that Saints game. And the Bears or Lions game, I mean, you'd think that they win both those games, but it wouldn't be surprising if they lost one of those games. It's not like the Vikings are that good of a team. I mean, they started 1-5 for a reason. So
Yeah, they're not that good. I mean, if
they're
you look
not.
at a
I
lot
mean,
of their
obviously
wins,
they've been 5-1 since, but it's not like they're that good of a team. And the wins that they've had, they haven't played the best opponents.
I mean, they almost lost to Mike Glennon last week.
Yeah, and I mean, they did have a good win. They did beat the Packers, but their other wins were against the Lions, the Bears. They lost to the Cowboys, and then they beat the Panthers, and then they barely beat the Jaguars. So none of those wins are amazing. The only one is the Packer win. But I could really see the Washington getting that 7th spot. And right now, I guess it would come down to division wins. I don't think they've played this season. No, they haven't played this season. So right now, Washington's 3-2 in the division, and Minnesota is 3-1. So if Washington were to beat the Eagles, they'd be 4-2, and then if the Vikings were to lose one of those 2 games, they'd have the same tiebreaker there. So I don't know what the next tiebreaker would be, but I think when it comes down to it, the Washington will get the 7th seed.
This is such an interest. This is, in my opinion, this is the most interesting seed in all of the playoffs right now. Is the NFC 7 seed. There are a lot of teams that can make it. The Giants could, Washington could, the Cardinals could, the Vikings could, the Bears could, the Lions could. And I'm ultimately going to pick the Carolina Panthers to get the set. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to pick the Panthers. I don't. I really don't know. I don't. I'm gonna go with the Vikings though. I'm not really high on the Vikings, but I'm kind of committed to them beating the Saints, and that would ultimately have me having them at probably 3-1. I think they're gonna lose to the Bucks this week, but their last three games are gonna be Bears, Saints, Lions. Now this is super interesting because the Bears and the Lions are both 5-7. So if the Vikings lose both of those games, that puts the Bears and the Lions in this conversation. Assuming they don't, go both. I'm assuming they both don't go 1-3, which they probably will. But I mean, I think the Lions and Bears are both like at least in the conversation. It's very interesting though. I'm gonna pick the Vikings because I think the Vikings will beat the Bears. I think I'm gonna pick them to beat the Saints as well. And I'm going to pick them to beat the Lions in the last game of the year because the Lions will be out by then. So I'm going to pick the Vikings to go 9-7 and get that 7th seed, which might be it's the Vikings itself isn't like a bold pick, but I think picking them over the Saints and having them go 9-7 is somewhat of a bold pick, I guess. I wanted to have some sort of like bold pick or whatever. And I was tempted to go with like some surprising team for the 7th seed here, like a Lions or a Bears. But I mean, just looking at their schedules, like the Lions play the Packers, Titans, Bucks, and Vikings. Like at best, they go 1-3, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's if they were going to win a game, it'd probably be the Vikings. But then again, the Vikings are the last game of the year, so they might even be out by then. Yeah, I mean the Lions are probably out of it. The Bears, I mean, they're the
The schedule
Bears.
is pretty easy, but they're just not a good team, so I don't see them like being able to get 3 wins or even 4 wins, which definitely won't happen. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bears probably go 2-2 at best, honestly. So, and
yeah,
7-9's I mean, 7-9 could get you the wild card, but I don't think it's going to.
I mean for me
You
it
think
would.
differently, though. Yeah, you think
Yeah, I mean for
differently.
me it would, but it's more of like a bold pick, and I think most people would probably go Vikings or Cardinals. I think if Murray was healthy, I'd go Cardinals, but he's not healthy, and I just can't really see them being able to. Maybe they can get that 7 seed, but I'd kind of be surprised at this point. Maybe if they were to win this week, I could change my mind. But these are official playoff brackets, so I'm gonna go Washington there. So
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals would be a good pick. Yeah, but I mean, Murray's hurt, and Kingsbury has proven to not be nearly as good as everybody thought he was, at least after the first 6 or so games this year. He just, I just don't think he's, I just don't think he's good.
he just doesn't have enough experience. That's really all it is.
I mean, that's what I would hope. That's what I'd
Yeah, I mean,
hope at
you'd hope that
least.
next year they'd
But
be
I
able
mean,
to
yeah, like
be
managing
even
the game,
better.
he's bad. He's
Yeah, no, he
bad.
is. Like we talked about it before. Like he's made decisions in games where like he's challenged stuff or he's not taking timeouts. He's just made some bad decisions that have
Yeah.
maybe not cost the game, but definitely led up to them losing the game for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't. So Kingsbury's not going to get fired, but
No,
I mean,
no.
if you as a Cardinals fan, you have to hope he's not bad because
You would
you don't want to have to move on from Kingsbury and give Kyler a whole new head coach.
you'd honestly hope that like they improve next year.
I
Obviously with
mean,
Murray
if you're the
healthy.
owner of the Cardinals, would you have like playoff expectations? Like you'd be expecting to make the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I think next year expecting to make the playoffs. Now they're in the toughest division, which doesn't help, but I think you'd have to expect to make the playoffs.
I wouldn't pick them. Like I don't. Okay, I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I don't know if I would pick them. But like if I'm the owner of the team or whatever, like I have playoff hopes. Like I'd
You
be expecting you to
you
make
would
the
hope
playoffs.
to go. I would say next year. Now again, this is a little in the future, but I would say your expectation for the Cardinals next year has to be 10-6 at
I
the
agree.
worst. I would say. I
Yeah,
would
if
say
I'm the
the
owner of
best
that
would be
team,
12-4. Like that'd be amazing, but I'd say they probably go 10-6 or 11-5.
I think they'd probably go 9-7 or ten and
I
six.
mean, with their division, I wouldn't be surprised because You have
And
six
again,
teams.
I don't think Kingsbury's as good as we think he is right now.
Yeah, but I think Murray.
Maybe I'm wrong on that,
I
but
think Murray's like too good that if he's healthy, and the defense will get better going into next year, and their offensive line you would at least hope would get better. I think they'd be a lot better next year, even with Kingsbury not being as good of a coach as I think most people thought he could be. But yeah, I think the Cardinals again. That's the toughest division of football by far. So
yeah. Yeah, I think it comes down to I don't think Kingsbury is as good, so I wouldn't pick them to go 11-5 or 10-6. Probably, I'd probably pick them at 9-7, and that division is so tough. The Niners are going to come back fully healthy, Garoppolo or not Garoppolo. That team's still so good. Definitely a playoff team. So, and with that being said, if all teams are healthy in the NFC West, I mean, they're all playoff teams,
yeah,
right?
they're all 9-7 plus teams. So
And if divisions weren't a thing, like you just played random opponents, but we still had the NFC standings, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is, if all these teams weren't all put in the hardest division in the NFL, like I'd have all four of them in the playoffs.
yeah,
Now,
I
is that
probably would too.
realistic? Probably not, because the Bucks and the Saints are still in the same division, and that division's not nearly as good as the West. So odds are whoever doesn't win that division next year, which I don't know what's going to happen because Breeze might retire. I think he probably does retire, so that probably will change things. But I think both of those teams still do both make the playoffs, which means one of these teams won't. And if I had to bet, I would bet that the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are the worst team in this division when fully healthy. I don't know if you disagree with that.
I'd like this year or next year.
Next year.
I would say it's between. I would say probably them just because they're inexperienced. All of the other teams have been rather in this. Well, they've all been to the Super Bowl, at least deep in the playoffs. So I'd probably say they're the worst team just because of that. But it's so close that it's kind of hard to tell. And one of those teams is going to get injured, so you're not going to know which team it's going to be. Like this year was the Niners. Next year it could be the Seahawks. Maybe Wilson gets injured, so you never know. But yeah, I would say the Cardinals would probably be the worst team in that division. But again, they could easily be the first team in that division next year. Like it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So that's our quote
So
unquote official playoff
should
bracket.
we recap it?
Yeah, I think we should recap it.
All right.
I'll let you recap your AFC teams, I guess.
All right, so AFC, so 1 through 7, I have Chiefs, Steelers, Bills, Colts, Ravens, Titans, and then Browns.
Yeah, I've got Chiefs 1, Steelers 2, Bills 3, Titans 4, Colts 5, Ravens 6, Browns 7.
And then NFC, I have Saints 1, Packers 2, Rams 3, Giants 4. And then I have Bucks at 5, Seahawks at 6, and then Washington at 7.
Yeah, I've got Packers 1, Saints 2, Rams 3, Giants 4, Seahawks 5, Bucks 6, Vikings 7. So
Yeah, so we agreed on some, but then disagreed on others.
Yeah, I think we had a good amount of disagreement here, like considering, there's 4 weeks left, so we shouldn't have too much disagreement, but I think we had a good amount, which is like good. So, we'll see how it plays out. I don't know. I'm not too confident in the Vikings pick. I think Washington could honestly win the division. I mean, you had them as the 6th or the 7th seed, so I think there's a chance they win that division for sure. The Seahawks could easily win their division. The Saints could easily be the number 1 seed as well. So I could be completely wrong in the NFC. I don't think I am, but clearly
most likely will be completely wrong on almost all these picks. Not all of them, but most of them. One like the wild card teams, and then maybe like a division winner here and there. But that's just there's still 4 games, still a month left of the season, which is so much time. So
yeah,
a lot of stuff can change. But this is officially our playoff bracket. We'll see if it holds true, whether it's the teams and or the seeds also. But once the playoffs do start, the week before the playoffs, we will make our playoff team bracket, I guess if that makes sense, to see who will win to the Super Bowl, who will win each game, get to the conference, get to the championship game. So we'll do that before the playoffs start. But for now, this is at least who we think is going to get in and what their seeds will be.
Yeah, I'm super excited to pick the playoff bracket. I mean, I'm assuming we both have the same team as of right now winning the Super Bowl, and I'm not even sure if that's going to be my official prediction or not. But I think we both have a favorite at least in our mind. I mean, that's the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are the favorite. I don't
Yeah,
know if I'm going to pick the Chiefs or not. We'll see. But
yeah, we'll see over these next couple games. They're definitely favorite to at least make the Super Bowl right now. I don't want to say win just because, but they're definitely the favorite. Yeah.
like, if so, I mean, it's no secret the Chiefs have kind of like slept through their games and won, or at least not played, as well as they could have. And if they continue to do this for the rest of the year, I mean, it makes the conversation slightly more interesting because if that's the case, we would have not seen the Chiefs play like their actual football for over a month. I would assume at some point the Chiefs play like another game that's, classic Chiefs. I think the last game they played that was like classic Chiefs was probably Chiefs Raiders. And that was a classic offensive Patrick Mahomes game, but even the defense was not great in that game. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how the Chiefs play, but yeah. After that, though, before we wrap this episode up, we're gonna just do our quick Week 14 predictions. There's some pretty good games in Week 14. Uh, I would say Week 13 was actually a pretty good week, but we'll get into Week 14 here. I'll start the first game. The first game here is Vikings at Bucks. It's in the 1 o'clock window. The Bucks are favored by 6.5 here. I'm gonna take Tampa Bay. Uh, Again, I'm high on the Vikings. Don't get me wrong. I have them as my 7 seed, and I think there's a chance they go 3-1 and beat the Saints. And I don't even know if they're that great of a team, but I still, I'm gonna take the Bucks here. Brady off a bye is really nice. The Bucks team in general off a bye, just because they haven't had time at all, especially, I mean, because of COVID. I think having this week late in the season to kind of just regather and figure out what needs to be done on offense, because right now they've had no game plan like offensively. It's kind of just been like do what Bruce Arians wants to do and see what works. And this week should allow them to find out what they want to be, what their identity is as an offense. That's the hope, at least. I think that'll be the case, and I'll take the Bucks here.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Bucks. I'm confident that they're going to come out of their bye week and put on a clinic offensively. I don't really think the Vikings are going to be able to do anything to stop them. I think this is kind of like a prove it game. They've been getting talked a lot in the media about if Brady's done, what about Arians and his coaching style? If they can do anything in the playoffs to even get there. Some people are kind of saying they may not get to the playoffs, which is a little ridiculous, but I think they win by 10 or more points. I would say maybe like the Vikings get a touchdown late just to make it closer, but I'd say they probably win by like 2 touchdowns. I would say.
Next game here is Cardinals at Giants. The Giants are 3-point underdogs. I'm going to take the Giants here. I'll take the points, honestly. The Giants are at home here. The Cardinals, as we've talked about, have not been too impressive as of recently. Kingsbury has not had a great second half of the year, to say the least, at least in my opinion. Murray's injured. And the Giants they've been very impressive as of recently throughout the past month. So I'll take the Giants. I think they win the game. Even if they don't, I have 3 points as well. So I'll take that.
Yeah, this is a weird line. I'm not really sure why the Cardinals were favored by 3. So it's just surprising that the Cardinals be favored by 3 with how they've been playing and how the Giants have been playing. But I'm going to go Giants. Like I was saying before, I think they're going to win the division. I think it starts with this game. So I think Giants just win outright. So yeah, my pick's the Giants.
Chiefs at Dolphins, also in the 1 o'clock window. I'm gonna take Miami. I think, as I literally just said, the Chiefs have been sleeping through games but winning them, and I think this is going to be another one of those games. I think it's going to be the offense is kind of just there, but at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is so good, Tyreek Hill's so good, Kelsey's so good that they're able to just win the game, whether it's in the whether it's in the fourth quarter, whether they just have like a constant field goal to 7-point lead. I think the Chiefs end up winning this game. But, I mean, I think the Dolphins are a great team. I think their defense is awesome. I think Brian Flores has been a great coach his first couple years. So I think the Dolphins keep it within 7. And so for that, I'll take the Dolphins.
I'm gonna go Chiefs. I think it will be a close game. Uh, I think it'll actually be a very high scoring game. I think the Dolphins will actually be able to put up points. I think Tua is gonna have a good game, like kind of like the game he had in Arizona when he played the Cardinals. That game was 34-31, Miami. I think he'll kind of be able to put up a performance like that, and not like the games where he's putting up like 80 to 100 yards passing and like a pick. Like I think he's actually gonna have a really good game this week. But Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, and he's going to put on a show, at least what I think. So I'm going to go Chiefs. Even with the 7 points, I would say they're kind of up like 10-13. And, I guess they're up like 2 possessions the entire game, kind of, and it's a back and forth, but they'll be able to pull away with how good their offense is. So I'm going to go Chiefs.
Colts at Raiders, 4 o'clock window. I'm going to take Indianapolis. Even though I have the Titans winning the division, I still think Indy does win this game. Sorry, I actually didn't say the line. The Raiders are 3-point underdogs. I'm going to take the Colts, though. I just think it comes – I mean, okay, so first, neither of us had the Raiders making the playoffs. I think we're both fairly low on the Raiders. We were both high on the Raiders, I would say, a few weeks ago, especially coming after that KC game. I thought we both thought that, that the Raiders are here now, but they're not. They're not, apparently. So I'm going to take the Colts. I think the Colts have a better defense. I think the Raiders probably have a better quarterback. I think they do. I think they have a better running back as well. But yeah, I mean, I'll take the Colts here. I think they're just overall the better team, and I would say Frank Reich is a better coach than Gruden right now. So
I'm gonna go Raiders. I think the Colts will win, but I'll take the 3 points. This will probably be a close game. I think both these teams are pretty close, like closely related, where they're not gonna like blow teams out, but they're gonna play tough. And I think both coaches. It doesn't seem like you're as high on Gruden. I'm definitely high on Frank Reich, and I think Gruden's a pretty good coach.
I think Gruden's pretty good too, but I would say Frank Reich's a top 10 coach, and I would say Gruden is probably between 10 to 15.
I mean, I think that's fair. For me, I'd have Gruden more towards the 10 than the 15, but they're both really good coaches, and I think these teams. This is a game that the Raiders do need, but I still think the Colts can pull out on top. But it will be a close game. It may even come down to like a field goal, maybe a backdoor cover, like something like that. It will come down to like a score at the end that will determine it. But I think the Raiders will be able to get those 3 points. So I'll take Raiders.
Last game here for predictions, probably the game of the week, Sunday Night Football, Steelers at Bills. Bills are 2-point favorites here as the home team. I'm going to take the Bills, even though they're the favorites and they have a worse record. I'm not a big Bills guy. Brandon's much higher on the Bills than I am. But it's so tough for me to want to pick the Steelers because, I mean, they just lost in such horrible fashion to Washington, and I'm also not a big on the Steelers either. They can't run the ball. I mean, that's huge, right? Like, especially as we get later on in the year. If you can't run the ball, I mean – if you're up like exactly when they were up 14-0 on the Washington football team, which by the way, they're not that good of a football team. You can't be passing the ball 50 times when you're up 14-0 in a game. Absolutely not. You're not going to win football games like that. Maybe you win 1, maybe you win 2 in the playoffs, but you're not winning the Super Bowl that way. I'll take the Bills here to win. I think ultimately the Bills have a better roster. I don't know if Allen's better than Roethlisberger. I think I've probably been a little bit harsh on Allen this year for sure. I do think McDermott's a better coach than Tomlin, which might be a bit controversial to say. But I will take the Bills here at -2. I'll take them at home to beat the Steelers.
I'm also going to go Bills. Like you said, I'm definitely higher on them. higher on the Bills than I am the Steelers. I think the Bills are the biggest threat to the Chiefs not making it to the Super Bowl. Again, we have to see how the seedings would rank out. I guess with where we have it, I guess they technically would face each other, but the Bills and the Chiefs would. But let's say that they don't, and the first time they can meet is the championship game. I think the Bills are definitely the biggest threat to the Chiefs. But for this game, I'm gonna go Bills. The Steelers I just don't think they're as. I mean, it's weird to say because they're 11-1 and we're just 11-0, but I just don't think they're like that good of a team. Now their defense is really good, but they've had some injuries on their defensive front with Bud Dupree and then Devin Bush earlier in the season, and his backup got injured, so he's out for the season, I think, too. So they've had some injuries. Now they still have like T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, and Joe Hayden, and Cameron Hayward, but I just don't see how they could win games with them throwing the ball 40 to 50 times a game with Big Ben and them running it like 10 to 15 times. If they can balance that out, they may have a chance, but I see it being more of the same for the Steelers, and I think the Bills could win, especially with them coming off that absolute like blowout win against the Niners last week. It was a dominating win, and I think Allen's returning to what he was in September, which can only help the Bills. So, yeah, I'm going Bills -2 here.
Yeah, I don't know that Allen returns to what he was in the first month of the season, but I mean, he's probably not as bad as I've said he might be. I still am not a big Allen guy, but yeah, I'm going to take the Bills anyways. All right, so that's our predictions. By the way, updated records from last week. I went 2-3. Brandon also went 2-3. I'll just quickly go over the games real quick. We both picked Washington +7 against the Steelers. We were right on that. Packers were -8 against the Eagles. Brandon picked Green Bay. I picked Philly. So I was wrong. He was right. Rams, Cardinals. I was right. I picked the Rams. He picked Cardinals. Browns, Titans. We both picked Tennessee there, -4.5. Wrong. Cowboys, Ravens. We both picked Dallas +7.5, and that was definitely not right. So yeah, we both went 2-3. So I am 14-17, and Brandon is 10-21. I guess you could say that. I don't know what you could say, but this is not good records, just flat out. I kind of would be interested to maybe next season or something. Just we both pick 5 games, like the 5 games we're most confident in, and just see like what the best record we could get would be.
Yeah, I think we should do that. Yeah,
because like doing the most interesting games is like cool, like the biggest games, like sure, that's fun, but these are already games that we probably talk about anyways in our episodes, which doesn't matter, I guess. But I'm just saying, like, I'd love to just be able to cherry pick whatever 5 games I like the most and see how well I could do. Maybe I'd be the same 14-17, but maybe I'm 17-14 instead. That'd be nice. But anyways,
I would definitely pick like bigger spreads and stuff.
Yeah, like a game I definitely wouldn't pick. I probably wouldn't pick Cardinals Giants this week.
There's some games this week that are like tough games to pick. Like Bills Steelers, like that's a tough game to pick. But
yeah,
I don't know. That's what we're doing so far. So
yeah. Anyways, that's basically it for this episode. Anything else?
No, I mean, kind of the same stuff. We're just kind of waiting for NFL playoffs to start and when the NBA season starts. So up until then, it's going to be the same stuff.
Yeah. Anything in the NBA happens, we'll be here just like Paul George extension. Obviously, football's still going to be here until the Super Bowl ends. And even then, it's probably still going to be here off-season talk. Yeah, I mean, that's it. YouTube, Spotify, still same stuff. Subscribe, whatever. Instagram, the.whole9yards. Follow if you want to. Appreciate everybody staying until the end. That's it, though.